CoffeeScript and SASS are two compelling technologies that have recently come on the Java scene. CoffeeScript is a little language that compiles down to JavaScript. It's basically JavaScript, the good parts, but with a little bit of syntactic sugar that makes it a much easier language to use. It compiles right down to JavaScript so that when you're in your browser dealing with JavaScript, you're dealing with just JavaScript. It provides some really useful mechanisms for generating code, for being able to have the kind of syntactic sugar that people are used to in languages like Ruby and Python that we just don't really have in JavaScript just because of JavaScript's age. And when CoffeeScript first started to become popular, people criticized it as, oh, it's not really a true language, it's not really powerful enough, it gets in your way if you're a real JavaScript developer. But we've since come to learn that CoffeeScript is influencing the future direction of JavaScript itself, with its terse syntax, with its better ability to express business language, business concepts, instead of all the boilerplate that you typically have to with a normal language like JavaScript. In a similar vein to CoffeeScript, there's also a technology called SASS, which stands for Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets, which is, again, this concept of a pre-compiler that compiles to the other language. Where CSS is a useful language for describing how your page is structured in a web browser, it doesn't age well, it doesn't maintain well, and that's largely because in CSS we don't show our homework. When I go through some complex calculations to figure out exactly what I want my page width to be for the masthead versus the sidebar versus the main content area, I end up hard-coding those calculations in my code. And CSS is a very repetitive language that way. We end up repeating things over and over that could be better expressed in terms developers are used to, like math right in the page, like functions, like variables. And SASS is an attempt to bring that to CSS in a really useful way. With SASS, we can create much more structured style sheets that show our homework in terms of how the page is structured and where things are on the page and the math used to come up with things. And we can do things like complex math with colors. So I can find a color and lighten it by 25% and use the two's complement to get a matching color for a hover, for instance. And I'm talking about several different things in this talk, including SASS, including semantic CSS, which is where we use the terms to describe the things on the page rather than positional things on the page like we would in a CSS framework like Blueprint. And I'm also talking about a tool called Compass, which is a bunch of functions and utilities for use with SASS that allow us to build complex, highly structured web pages that evolve well.